Dinner at 8 o'clock. Were the pearls I bought you? That was the text. No, I'm sorry. No, I watched your interview on CNBC and I'm proud. Just a command from a man who hadn't spoken to me since he left me standing in a white dress on a rain-slicked sidewalk 3 years ago. My father didn't just skip my wedding, he foreclosed on the venue an hour before the vows because the groom didn't have a pedigree. He thought that by taking the roof from over my head, he'd force me back into his shadow. He was wrong that I'm Elara Vance, and while he was busy protecting a legacy that was rotting from the inside, I was building a fortress. Tonight, I'm going to dinner, but I'm not going as his daughter. I'm going as his replacement. Before I show you how I turned his invitation into his indictment, tell me in the comments, have you ever had a toxic parent try to reconnect only after you became the person they said you'd never be? I need to know I'm not the only one who kept the receipts. The pearls felt like a lead weight around my neck as I pulled into the driveway of the estate. The gravel crunched under the tires of a car that cost more than his remaining liquid assets. 3 years ago, I was unfit to carry the family name because I chose love over a merger. Today, the Vanguard Group, my company, is the lead story on every financial desk in the country. My father didn't invite me for a meal, he invited me because the wolf is at his door, and he's hoping I brought the key. The dining room felt like a museum of a life that was slowly losing its oxygen. My father, Arthur, sat at the head of the table, his posture as rigid as the high-backed mahogany chair. He was swirling a glass of vintage Bordeaux, the same way he used to swirl his threats, with a casual, practiced elegance. To his left sat my stepmother, Lydia, her eyes darting between my husband Julian and the diamond watch on my wrist. Julian didn't belong here, according to the house rules. 3 years ago, Arthur had called him the help and barred him from the property. Tonight, he hadn't even looked Julian in the eye. He just gestured toward the far end of the table, a cold, silent admission that the man he tried to erase was now the only reason I was sitting in this room. You look well, Elara, Arthur said, his voice dropping an octave as he set his glass down with a sharp clack against the wood. Success suits you. I always knew that a little hardship would sharpen your instincts. Hardship. That's what he called the ruin he tried to orchestrate. He reached into the inner pocket of his blazer and pulled out a leather-bound folder. He didn't ask about the hotel opening in Dubai. He didn't ask how Julian and I survived those first 6 months in a studio apartment. He just slid the folder toward me, his fingers tapping the cover with a rhythmic, predatory patience. The Vanguard Group is doing well, but everyone knows the market is volatile. I have a proposal. A merger of our interests. My experience, your momentum. It's what your mother would have wanted. He was using her memory like a shield, hiding the fact that his own empire was currently bleeding out that I didn't open the folder. I didn't even touch it. I just watched the condensation from my water glass pool on the mahogany, a slow, deliberate stain on his perfect surface. You didn't ruin my wedding for my own good, Arthur, I said, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. You did it because you couldn't control the one thing you didn't own. You thought that by breaking the girl, you'd keep the asset. He started to interrupt, a dismissive wave of his hand, but I leaned forward, the light catching the sharp edges of my wedding ring. But here's the thing about assets. They change hands. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single, thin sheet of paper, not a merger agreement, but a notice of default. I slid it across the table, covering his leather folder. You've been looking at the news, but you've been reading the wrong headlines. You saw that Vanguard acquired a distressed real estate portfolio last month. What you didn't see was the list of underlying debt. I watched his eyes scan the document, his brow furrowing as he hit the third paragraph. Vantage Capital sold your primary mortgage to an anonymous holding company 3 weeks ago. That holding company is a subsidiary of my firm. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind of quiet that precedes a structure fire. I didn't come here to merge our interests, Dad. I came here to tell you that I am now your senior lien holder. I own the debt on this estate, the gallery in Soho, and the very chair you're sitting in. His face went from a confident flush to a sickly, ashen gray. He wasn't looking at his daughter anymore. He was looking at the woman who had just foreclosed on his life. Arthur's hand trembled as he reached for the glass of Bordeaux, but he stopped midair, realizing the liquid would only betray his fear. You can't do this, he hissed, the loving father mask finally shattering to reveal the desperate predator underneath. I am the reason you have that drive. I made you. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor like a blade. No, I replied, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than his roar. You tried to bury me in the mud of a ruined wedding day. You just forgot that I'm the one who knows how to build on unstable ground. I looked at the pearls around my neck, the ones he told me to wear. I unclipped the latch and let them fall. They hit the table with a series of dull, rhythmic thuds before rolling into his expensive folder. These are fakes, Arthur. I sold the originals 3 years ago to pay the first month's rent on a derelict warehouse. That warehouse is now the Vanguard flagship. I turned to Julian, who stood up with a quiet, dangerous dignity that Arthur could never hope to possess. You gave me 24 hours to vacate my wedding venue. I'm a businesswoman, so I'll be more professional. You have until Monday morning to vacate this house. As we walked toward the door, I didn't look back at the crumbling throne or the man sitting on it. Legacy isn't the name on the building or the debt you pass down to your children. Legacy is the strength to walk away from a poisoned table with your hands clean. I left behind his shame and his collapse. I kept my husband, my integrity, and my empire.